This is Frank Mandolini, and this is the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast. Hey, hello, my dear Last Minute Wrestling Podcast listeners. How are you today? As always, I am your host from Italy, Frank Mandolini. And wow, what a milestone achievement! Having made it to 45 episodes, and what a great way it is to celebrate your Thanksgiving for my American listeners by listening to my interview with an American pro wrestler recently turned color commentator on AEW Dark. I'm talking about the wonderful Veda Scott. Veda is a guest that I've been looking to have for a very, very long time, and you will understand why during this interview. But before we go, well, this year we are all looking for the perfect holiday gift, and today I want to tell you about the gallery. The Gallery Shop is a curated collection of photographs from around the world. All prints are made from 100% recycled aluminium, giving your wall that gallery finish. Right now, for the holiday season, the Gallery is exclusively offering our listeners 25% off their next purchase using the code FRIDAY. That's 25% off your next purchase at thegallery.com, which is thegallery.com, using the code FRIDAY. The Gallery, create your perfect space.
Are you listening?
Hi, I'm Tristan, host of The Tristan Law Show, and you can listen to my podcast where you currently enjoy this one and at TristanLawShow.com. The unique part about The Tristan Law Show is I introduce you to the personalities in and out of the pro wrestling ring. And you don't have to be a pro wrestling fan to enjoy my podcast. Don't believe me? Well, after you finish listening to my pod brother, Frank Mandolini's Last Minute Wrestling Podcast, search for and listen to The Tristan Law Show. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll be waiting for you. Enjoy the episode.
You can find the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast in its home website, which is lmwpodcast.com, or on any social media just by typing in LMW Podcast. But don't forget also to check our sponsors, which are superkicks.com, sprkix.com, grabsapparel.com, and themerchstand.co.uk. You can go there, order a wonderful wrestling t-shirt, and have a little bit of discount by using the code LASTMINUTE. If you want to be a sweetheart, tell everybody about this podcast. Tell your friend, tell your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your mom, your nana, whoever you want to. Everybody has to have the same opportunity that you have to listen to this interview. And if you want to be even sweeter, you can go to paypal.me/LMWpodcast, ko-fi.com/LMWpodcast, or patreon.com/LMWpodcast, and make a donation, a contribution to help support this project going forward. Many, many thanks from me. Okay, now I really can't hold it any longer. Let's go to the interview with Veda Scott. Hi Veda, how you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Very great. I've literally been wanting to do this interview for a very long time now. And first of all, congratulations for the news of your engagement with a certain Mike Bailey.
Thank you.
That's great news. That was an highlight on wrestling Twitter over the past few weeks. Trust me.
You.
How was that? How did he propose?
It wasn't like a whole big story or anything. Like I finally got here, and he did it then. We hadn't seen each other for almost 10 months. So realistically, we probably would have done this a while ago if we would have been able to see each other. But yeah, so I was finally able to get here. I had to get a special clearance to cross the border, and a special special permission to come to Canada.
So, but that was basically the first thing that you two did once you got reunited. That's so cool to hear. So cool. And correct me if I'm wrong. Do I spot an amethyst on the ring or something like that?
Yeah, I'm a person who likes colors, and I don't really wear any jewelry at all, so I don't wear rings or anything. So he knew if I was gonna wear it, it had to be colorful. It was to like suit me a little bit more. I'm still not used to having it on, and I keep like knocking it into stuff, but we'll get there.
And you said you're now in Canada. Are you gonna spend Thanksgiving over there?
It is. Oh my gosh, it is almost Thanksgiving or American Thanksgiving. There's Canadian Thanksgiving too.
Yeah.
So when you come to Canada right now, and some European countries had this for a little bit, I believe. I don't know that I think there's different lockdowns and things too. When you come to Canada, you have to quarantine for 14 days. So, yes. And that includes Canadians who are returning home unless they had left for certain purposes. So anyone who enters Canada, unless you're there under like a essential waiver, you have to quarantine for 14 days. So that's what we're doing right now. So you have to, when you say you're coming to Canada, you have to commit to 2 weeks at least to do the quarantine. I have permission to be here for a bit longer than that. And then I have to leave, and I can come back if I get permission again. But you still have to do this quarantine every time, which is what makes it like less convenient, but also like it's good that they're doing it. Yeah. So I am on. I want to say I can check because there's a little app where you need to check in every day and report your status. I am on day 8 of my quarantine. So once it's finished, you have more freedom of movement, but also this is in Quebec, and they're pretty much locked down right now anyway. So won't make much of a difference.
You cannot go from different parts of the city or from town to town or stuff like that.
So right now they don't have as much of a regional lockdown as they did at one point, but like there's no like all the restaurants are only takeaway, and the gyms are closed for like full classes. Many like facilities are closed, so a lot of the indoor stuff is closed, but the schools are shops are open but restricted. So it's less of they had a very, very strict lockdown here for a while. This is less of one because the schools are still open, but for the most part it's not. Once this quarantine is over, like I can leave the house, but there's not really anything to go and do per se, which is fine. But yeah, so this is 14 days you have to stay.
Yeah. I reckon that the situation is pretty much similar from what we have here in Italy at the moment. We literally cannot go anywhere else except like grocery stores and leave one town to go to another at this moment. So
right. Here they don't have they've talked about doing more like the regional lockdowns. They don't have that right now. I don't know that they will. But they're just sort of asking people to stay where you need to be. And then, of course, in the States, they have almost nothing. So depends where you are.
It's so weird because a few months ago, like back in May, when I did the interview with Mike, I was literally coming out that day, I think, of the first lockdown that we had like in Italy, and we don't call it lockdown at the moment, but it's more or less like it is, like as a real lockdown. And it's weird that I got to chat with you at this very moment. That's a weird conjunction to have in this particular year. Tell me.
Yeah, where I'm from, and I live in Pennsylvania when I'm in America, and they have depending on where you are regionally in the state, there's different levels of things. But when I left, they still had you could still dine indoors with capacity restrictions. They were talking about getting rid of that, and then there was talk that like once the schools go away for the schools get a break for Thanksgiving, like a week.
Oh yeah.
Maybe they wouldn't come back from that, but I don't know. I'm half paying attention to it because I do have to go back at some point, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. And talking about the wrestling side of things.
Yes.
Recently, we saw you doing an amazing job as a commentator alongside with Taz, Excalibur over on AEW Dark. And how that thing came to be? How did that started?
So originally I did announcing for the Women's Tag Team Cup tournament that they put on YouTube a few months ago. So I got the chance to do that, and then once I was asked to come back to finish, because there was multiple days of taping for that. Mm-hmm. I was asked if I wanted to sit in on Dark. And just to do a little bit more work, and of course I did. And then I was brought back and did a little bit more Dark, and so it's pretty much been I was brought in to do the women's thing, and then got the chance to do a little bit more, which was super cool. Not just the women's matches, but everything on Dark, and but yeah, so they originally asked me to do the women's tournament, kind of to. They were bringing in a bunch of independent wrestlers to wrestle in it too, so this was just sort of to keep it. To have another independent perspective on the announcing side of it too.
And you knew the background of many of those competitors. You provided great insights. In my opinion, did a terrific job. Like
a lot of them I've wrestled over the years. But I was at least acquainted with pretty much everyone, and many of them are people that I consider friends because we've been wrestling together, traveling together for years.
Yeah. And of course, that wasn't your first experience behind the desk with a microphone, right?
No. So I've done as much announcing as I could do over the years. A lot of it times it's just me kind of like asking if I can maybe do some matches, or someone who's putting a show together will ask if I can sit in on some matches after I've wrestled or before I've wrestled, or would I be in? I didn't. It's only recently, and by recently I mean like within the past year, because there hasn't been a lot of wrestling recently, that I've started to take commitments that were only for commentary. Before that, it was a lot of like I would wrestle on the show, and then maybe I would do a match or two on the commentary. And now I've sort of, because people started to ask, like, would you be able to kind of just come and do our whole show or provide it remotely? And that's been really cool, because I didn't think that would ever be a possibility, that I would be able to call entire broadcasts. So like Rise Wrestling, which is based out of Chicago area, has had me. I've had the chance last year to do a whole show of theirs by myself, which was fun. I've done commentary for Shimmer for years, that same thing where I would wrestle and then do the commentary. I did quite a bit when I was with Ring of Honor, and then all over the independents, just kind of picking it up here and there. But I haven't had a consistent job as an announcer. Just kind of, that's the direction that I would really like to go.
Yeah. And about your time with AEW Dark, do you still have Taz pen?
I do. It's very safe, but I do still have it. He didn't want it back yet.
Really? What does he have to do to have his pen back?
I've been offering to give it back for months, so he just has to take it. He just has to accept it back. He has to keep the pen, but I'm gonna get it back to him.
And during one of the episodes of AEW Dark that you were commentating, we had an Italian wrestler debuting for AEW. D3. Yeah, great.
It was awesome. Very, and he's been back since then.
He's been back a couple of times.
Maybe, and I think it was just on maybe last week. Time is like very amorphous right now. Yeah, he was awesome. Very, very interesting. Very interesting background. Apparently, he's done some stunt and acting work. Really, really cool. And I like to see that. I think that's one of the strengths of Dark, is that you get introduced to people that you've never seen before, and maybe it's you've never seen them before because they don't wrestle as often in your country, or they've been sort of if they've been wrestling in the United States, they've been maybe in smaller promotions that aren't as popular, that you don't maybe see online as much, and now you can see like, oh, he was great, I'm going to seek him out and find out more about him, find his matches on YouTube, follow him on social media. That's, I think, really cool. No, he's great.
Yeah. He's been when he moved to the US, he's been doing something around the New York area. He's been he trained at House of Hardcore, and now he's in Florida. He's mostly based in Florida. That's probably geographically quite far. Yeah, but that's one of the great opportunities that Dark gave to many people to have this great platform and this great production value and this kind of stuff that normally you're not allowed to wrestle in the indies for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And that was so cool. And you said that moving forward, you're more interested in a career as a commentator than a wrestler, or do you think you can do both?
I think I can do both. However, I recognize the value in sort of committing yourself to one thing, particularly if you're looking at sort of like a higher level sort of like an AEW or WWE or wherever. Sometimes being versatile is great and having that background is great, but also like spreading yourself too thin makes it impossible to be good at one thing, and then you're kind of just like okay at many things. And for me, I love wrestling. I love being in a ring. Obviously, it's why I got into wrestling. But over time, I've grown to love the broadcasting side of things and some behind the scenes side of things more than I thought that I would. And over time, I think it's evolved to a point where I feel myself sort of moving in that direction more so than in the ring. Part of that just logistically, like you can't physically wrestle forever. But I enjoy doing commentating and broadcasting. At times even more than wrestling, because I just sort of, I think that I'm good at it, but also I enjoy being part of that part of pro wrestling, like the storytelling part of pro wrestling. And when you do the commentary, like that's all you do is kind of tell the story.
Yeah. And it seems that I am complimenting you every time I speak, but it's very well deserved in this case, because you are really eloquent in the way that you do the commentary of your pro wrestling matches. And do you think this in part can be owed to your background at law school, because you have to be very eloquent in that particular area?
So possibly I'm I'm a person who loves words. I'm a reader. I've been a reader since I was I started reading very, very young. My mother got me a library card that as soon as I could sign my name, which is what was required to get your own library card. In my library system, you had to be able to write your name. So as soon as I could write my name, which I learned to do so I could get a library card, I started reading. So I've been a reader and a writer in university. My concentration, my major was in English, and English when you say in English at an American university, it means literature, pretty much, reading and writing. So my focus in university was on reading and writing and drama. And so I've been a reader and a writer and a collector of words my whole life. So I think that that helps out a lot, that I just have a background in words and in different like little things that you can call upon while you're doing the commentary. So I think that helps. It's just to have a broad, I don't want to say a broad vocabulary, but like a good background in reading and speaking.
Yeah, definitely. What were your top 3 books during the lockdown?
Oh no, don't ask me this. I'm very bad at lists. So
not the top 3, just 3 that you enjoyed.
Oh, I don't even know. I read a ton down during lockdown. I do a lot of a million more books on the same subject, so I do a lot of I like biographies and historical books, like historical anything. What did I read recently? So I will tell you what I am reading. You know how people have like a comfort food, like a food that you eat when you're kind of just like need something warm. My comfort book is this is such a stereotype, and it's exactly what people would think, but is the book Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. It's a very typical this is
Victorian
a book that I was very into when I was 11 and continues to be. So I reread it, every 6 months or so, just because it's like my comfort book, my comfort story. So I actually just finished my bi-yearly reread of that.
So
I think I'm doing a lot in lockdown that was like rereading things that I've already read, and I think it's like sort of like when you rewatch a movie that you like, or like you rewatch a TV series that you've already seen. I think a lot of people did that.
Yeah, yeah. You're talking to a person that rewatches Friends yearly. So yeah, I know the feeling. I know I know
Yeah.
the feeling.
It's familiar, and like there's no surprises, and you always like see new things as you do it. I'm sure you get like new jokes or new like little things in the background you didn't notice. So I think it's like that. I have books like that.
Of course. And do you lean more towards like British literature or American one?
I don't know that I necessarily lean towards anything. I'll kind of read anything. When I was younger, like I said, I had a very like I think this is stereotypical of many youngsters, but I like went through my huge like Jane Austen Regency phase. But yeah, so I pretty much I'll read anything, honestly. There's times so I was a holdout for a long time on e-readers, like Kindles and that sort of thing, and I was a holdout for a long time because I love books, and I have amassed a massive library of books, and I collect them along the way. The problem was that I started moving around a lot, and I couldn't bring anything with me, so eventually like a lot of these books had to just kind of go into storage, and I converted to a lot of like a Kindle, or my library, my local library has an e-reading service, and downloading the books on my iPad. And I was like, okay, I understand now why people do this, because now I have a whole little library in my iPad. And that ends up, though, the thing with that is because you're not like fully committed to I end up reading a lot of like free books, or like this is what's available this month for you, selections, and I read it, and it's not good, but I always finish it. So I have, because of e-readers and my Kindle, have read a lot of stuff that like I would never revisit recently. Sort of like, again, you watch, like you start to watch a movie and you're like, oh, this is not good, but I guess I'll finish it. It's like that, except the whole day. So yeah, I'll pretty much do anything, even if it ends up being awful.
Now that you say that, you remind me that lately you tweeted out that you're watching every Netflix Christmas movie that there is, and they are all awful.
They're all bad. They're all bad. So
have you found a good one?
Like the modern Netflix, and like the modern like here we have like the Hallmark Channel has movies here, well, in America. So Netflix is like regional things. So like if I came to Italy and tried to use my Netflix, I would have access to different things than I do in America. So in America, the Netflix has like 1,000 Christmas movies. They were all bad. Here in Canada, there are less, but there are still some. So I've been watching them and making Speedball watch them, and we have not found a good one yet of the modern ones. My favorite Christmas movie is A Muppet Christmas Carol. That's
amazing.
classic.
Amazing.
Awesome. These are not like this. When you read like when you watch like A Christmas Inheritance or something like that, they're not good. Christmas Prince, terrible. But we watch them all. You like any of them so far?
No.
He didn't like any of them.
Thanks, Mike, for joining again this podcast. So back on the commentary, did you receive any feedbacks, any tips from your colleagues? Anything word of note?
Everyone at AEW, from wrestlers to announcers to the EVPs to everyone, in my experience, again, this is only my experience, is always super helpful and supportive. I think because they're growing a new product, that's just the mentality that they have. This idea that like it's not going to succeed unless everyone succeeds. So I have gotten nothing but help and feedback and just positive energy from everyone there all the time. Again, from every locker room to just anyone who's like helping with the set, just across the board. I'm really lucky as an announcer that I got to work with some people who are so professional and so tenured as commentators. Like the team that they've put together is just massive in terms of experience. So that was really cool for me. And they've all been like, they've all given me feedback and helped to answer my many, many, many millions of questions, no matter how many times I come at them for more advice. And they're very accommodating with that. So that's been really cool. I've been really lucky, just my whole career, to work with a lot of people, especially on the announcing side, who were not just great at what they do and super professional at what they do, but also very forthcoming with advice and with guidance. And so I've been lucky with that.
And something that comes to your mind when you think about it, some great advices that you got over your career, or even lately in AEW?
In terms of announcing, or just like in general? In terms of announcing,
announcing.
kind of just, I like to, I think it's important, and this is important with wrestling too, like in ring or in general, like none of it is a mystery. Like it's not this like great and mysterious thing that like no one can figure out how to do. And sometimes I think it's portrayed like that, especially to fans, that like there's this like curtain that you cannot step behind. If you watch wrestling and you listen to announcing, or you watch what people do, you can see how they do what they do and the choices that they make in terms of how they do their matches or how they move. And there's things that you can see that like maybe you can either try to replicate or ask them about to help you and train you in that direction. And it's all a discipline. Like nothing about this is magical. It's all just choices that people make. So when it comes to like announcing, I try to pay attention to like the way that people like the way that they structure what they say and the amount of time they spend on one thing. And obviously there's other factors when you're doing like TV announcing, where you have someone in your ear telling you like, do this now, say stuff, stop talking, etc. And it's more or less depending on where you are. But I think the idea that it's just this like mysterious art that you would never be able to figure out is damaging. I think it takes away from the amount of work that people put in, because it is work, it's discipline, and it's choices, and it's bettering yourself. So I think for me, it's not so much advice, it's just the fact that like the advice is out there, and that you need to just pay attention to what people do and how they do it, and then talk to them about it.
Yeah, and talking about the wrestling side of things, of course you've been a part of the scene for the past 10 years or so, and many of the household names that we see today across both major companies in the US, you probably had the chance to wrestle with a lot of those girls, and I figure out that like 10 years ago, the women's revolution or this brand and content that they keep saying wasn't really much around. How do you see that the environment has changed in the wrestling business from that standpoint?
So I think right now the main thing is that there's always been lots of wrestling around internationally, and I think that maybe in America in particular we were very bubbled and people were not so much paying attention to that unless you sought it out, and it was harder to seek out. Like you had to find tapes if you wanted to watch more of what was going on in Japan. But now as things are more prevalent on the internet and you can just search on YouTube or Daily Motion, or everyone has a streaming site, it's easy to see more wrestling. And that means that people who maybe were restricted just to where they were being awesome in their own country are traveling the world, or were traveling the world when you could travel more and more. And that I think the fact that sometimes when people are really, really good, but sort of restricted and not in front of your face, you don't worry about them so much. But once that starts, once the caliber of competitor and once the caliber of athlete is known and goes up, then everyone has to get better to keep up. And I think that's sort of what happened a lot with in America, is that more and more people started being on the scene who were really, really good. And maybe that meant that everyone else had to kind of like kick it up a little bit to catch up. And now we're at a point where I think in terms of women's wrestling, especially if we're just talking American wrestling, there's a lot of people. It used to be that there was like a couple people who were good and then everybody else. And when you go back and watch, maybe objectively they weren't even that great, but they seemed awesome because
by comparison.
otherwise the caliber maybe wasn't so good. But now the standards are higher, the caliber is higher, the level of competition is higher, and people want to do more and want to be better. And now I think we're at a point where like so many people are good and it's so competitive, and I think that's great. And it's become where like you can wrestle for like 6 months now and end up getting signed somewhere, and there's good and bad parts of that, but that's just because there's people who immediately have potential and are immediately doing really well. And I think that the caliber of just the expectation for like what is good wrestling has gone up a lot, and I think that helps everyone too. So for me, it's the coolest thing is that it's not like, oh, there's a couple of people who are pretty good. Now it's like everyone is pretty good, and to stand out, you have to be like truly special, and there's more and more people who are truly special. And I think that's just great for everyone. Like it's not okay anymore to just sort of like coast along. Like you have to actively try to figure out how to stand out. And I think we are seeing a diversity too in terms of like what that means. Like it's not just being one type of wrestler. There's different types of wrestlers to be and still succeed. Sometimes it's like your whole social media profile. It's how you interact with fans. It's the content that you put out. And that's a whole other dynamic to wrestling that I think can make someone really stand out, and I think is important now too.
Do you think that wrestlers, male or female, doesn't matter, should learn how to market themselves better?
Sure, if that's like something you want to do. I think for me, so I look at the, like, obviously a lot of things happen on social media now, especially when there's not a lot of wrestling, and I see people get annoyed about that like so and so is only popular because of their Twitter, or so and so is only popular because of the videos they put out. And like you can be upset about that and whether or not you think that's valid, but also it's the playing field you're working on. So either you need to figure out how to make yourself exceptional without any of that, or you need to figure out how to accept it and make yourself better at what works right now. And so I see that a lot where people are like, well, so-and-so is only over because of this. And it's like, whether or not you feel that's valid, that's the situation, because that's what wrestling is right now. A lot of social media heavy. And if you want to compete with those people, then you need to get better at maybe marketing yourself or branding yourself. And if it's not what you want to do, if that's not how you want to proceed with your career, then it may not go exactly the way you want to go, but at least like you'll be happy with what you've done. But you can't have both. You can't say, it sucks that so-and-so is popular because they make videos and I'm not going to do that, but also I'm going to complain about not being where I want to be. Like you need to you need to be like at peace with one or the other. And so I think if you want to get better at marketing yourself and get better at social media because you think it'll help your career or it's something that will be fun for you, that's great. And if it's not something that you want to have as part of your career, then you need to recognize that it might end up hurting you in the long run, but maybe you're okay with that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I literally just finished listening the latest Chris Van Vliet interview with Ricky Starks, and that's what he says basically, that he used the $600 to bet on himself and create a video, a vignette or whatever. That I'm sure you're familiar with that, and that. Basically what set things in motion to go on the NWA, and now you know where he is at the moment on Team Taz.
Ricky's a perfect example of that because he was one of sort of the early adapters and the early adopters of things like a video that wasn't just, so he was one of the first, like the Starks Line videos were one of the first videos that were artistic and creative, and they weren't just like a compilation of you doing wrestling moves. It told us about the Ricky Starks character, but it didn't have wrestling. Like it intrigued you, and it made you want to know more about this person. And I think that was one of the first times that anyone did that, at least on the indies, that didn't have like a television show to put it on. He just put it on the internet. And you're right, that's exactly where things sort of took off from him. And it wasn't overnight. And I think that's an important thing to take from maybe like a Ricky story or someone like that. It wasn't like he put out this video and the next day he was making $1 million. It was, oh, this guy's pretty cool, pretty creative. I want to know more about this. He wrestled more and more. He kind of moved up the ladder a little bit, but it still took time. and he had the patience to let that develop, and I think that's pretty admirable too.
Yeah, and there is a very lesser known, pretty much a lesser known example of that. There is actually a group of, I think, like 3, 4, maybe 5 young Scottish wrestlers. They are like 17 to 20 years old, more or less. And they still have to make their official debut in a wrestling ring. And they've been creating a series of vignettes and characters during the lockdown. And they are truly amazing. Basically, it was the best feud I had the chance to see online during this whole period. And they still have to have their first match.
Right.
That's amazing. They understood that concept. That's really interesting to see, like those kids applying those marketing tools, marketing strategies. That's great.
So just because then, especially like you said, like with social media, even if maybe you're never so it's a bunch of guys in Scotland, right? There's a chance that you will never see them wrestle live. There's a chance.
Yeah.
But you can still follow their career through social media, and I think that's true of a lot of like the quote unquote like internet famous wrestlers. And when I say that, a lot of people take that as a negative, but when you think of how many people are like huge fans of like Danhausen or Warhorse or these, or even Ricky Starks, who maybe until Ricky Starks wrestled Cody on Dynamite had never seen him wrestle a match, but they knew who he was. Or even to take it back enough, maybe they had not seen him until he was with NWA. Like they saw him on Power on YouTube. But before that, they'd never seen him have a match, but they knew who he was and they knew like what he was all about. And I think that is a really powerful branding tool, to have people know who you are and buying your shirts, and then like maybe we'll never ever get to see you wrestle live. I think that's pretty cool. If you can get people to sort of buy into your persona, that's a feat. That's an accomplishment.
Yeah, totally. And this gives me a great segue to one of the best review series I've seen online, your Mustard review.
Yes, I have to pick them back up. So the Mustard reviews fell to the wayside a little bit when I was preparing to leave for this trip, because I had to kind of get everything sorted out to leave my home for a while. But and now that we're in lockdown, I don't have as much access to Mustard. But I'm gonna bring him back, for sure.
Yeah. Your fan base in Italy, which is, I think, me and I personally, I don't know anybody else, but that should be enough. We are all waiting for that. those were brilliant examples.
They'll definitely come back. And my thought is, so my goal is to try to find something that doesn't go with mustard, like a food that is absolutely inedible with mustard on it. And I haven't found it yet. But I was thinking that maybe while I'm here, I could try some like traditional like Quebecois or traditional Canadian foods with mustard to see if it doesn't work. I don't think I will find anything because I love mustard, but we're going to try.
I actually pitched it, you did one post about it. I pitched an idea of mustard pizza. Did you try it?
I haven't tried it, but there's no reason that it wouldn't work. Because
that's like all the reasons for it to not work.
There's no reason it wouldn't work. So I like mustard on everything. I like pizza. I think like the mustard is very like sharp tasting. I think would go well with the cheese. Mustard on the crust, of course, would be good because mustard on bread, mustard on a pretzel is great. It should work. I don't know. I'm gonna have to try it. There's no reason it wouldn't work. I'm still gonna try to find a food that doesn't go with mustard. I'm thinking it might be a liquid. I'm not sure. Like mustard and milk. I'm not sure about. Or well, in my case, it would be soy milk. But we'll see. We'll see.
Mustard and milk or soy milk, it's pretty much revolutionary.
Might not work. Gotta try. I'm gonna find something that is inedible with mustard, but I haven't yet.
Listen, Veda. Before we close this conversation, we need to close the circle that I said. I opened back in May with Speedball, and we opened our conversation talking about cuisine. And now I need you to tell me a vegan recipe of yours that you would suggest people to try.
Oh gosh, I'm not even a huge recipe person. I love to cook and I love to be in the kitchen, so I love just trying different things. I do a lot with tofu. So I personally love tofu. A lot of people don't like it, and I even like it just plain. But I would say for anyone who wants to like so a lot of people don't like tofu. So anyone wants to get into
I love it. I love the smoke one.
I made a lentil soup the other day that was really good. Well, technically, I guess Speedball mostly made it because he also cooks. But I'm not the biggest. So my thing is, I will start looking at a recipe and I will start changing it, and then in the end, it's not the recipe at all. But that's only something that you can do if you spend a lot of time in the kitchen and you get to know how food works. So I think my tip is not a recipe. It's just to like play with your food more and try to be creative with things and figure out what you like. And if there's something that you think you don't like, maybe try it in a different way and maybe you will like it.
Well, thank you so much. Plug in all that you have to plug in, all of your channels. Where do we find you?
Honestly, right now I don't really have a lot going on, so I would say just go to my Twitter, which is at It's Veda Time. I'm sure you'll link it in the tweet. That's pretty much where I put everything. So everything goes there first, and so that's the best place to follow me.
Okay, thank you so much. That was a lovely conversation.
Thank
you so much. Ciao.
Hey, thank you for listening. Before you go, remember that your actions matter. You can help build the LMW podcast community by following Frank on Twitter and other social medias by searching at LMW Podcast. Visit the official website, which is lmwpodcast.com. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and a follow on Spotify. Extra kindness points for you if you become a supporter on Patreon, Ko-fi and PayPal, or if you buy some merchandise from the official LMW store. I've been Frank Mandolini, and you stay safe.